Good morning. This is Kenneth and Heather with the Advancing Equity Coalition, here to give you our rundown, our take on last night's school board meeting on Tuesday, April 12th. Heather, how are you doing today?
Good. That was a meeting.
Yeah, that was definitely a meeting. I feel like I'm in a very weird space right now. I went from this very emotional school board meeting to coming home and watching the Timberwolves make the playoffs. Wolves back. But I'm very tired this morning because I slept with a lot of different emotions last night. So anyway, Heather, why don't you give us a quick rundown around what went down last night at the school board meeting?
Yeah, so last night at school board meeting, we had a lot of public comment. It was very clear that public comment was open to the much more than its usual amount of people. There were quite a few students in attendance from many different high schools around the city. We'll get into that more a little bit. But as far as like the business of the school board meeting, the school board did announce that plans for the interim soup are coming soon and that they are being made. The interim superintendent and Superintendent Graff did not sign a contract and will not be staying past the end of June. We saw name changes for 2 schools. And I think in the midst of everything that is happening tonight right now in our city and in MPS, I almost lost sight of the fact that like this school, Jefferson, will now be named Ella Baker. And what an amazing thing that students will not have to walk into Jefferson school anymore, but they will walk into Ella Baker School. And Sheridan is also getting a name change. And so, yeah, just to have that moment. That
Las
was
Estrellas, the name.
Yes, thank you.
Las Estrellas.
Las Estrellas. And so that's exciting. And then the school board did talk about the fact that they will be taking applications for a school board member to take Director Josh Pauly's place. They'll be accepting nominations from April 14th to April 28th. And on May 10th, the May 10th board meeting, the board will be making a nomination. That was the bulk of the business side of the meeting. And then there was a whole other side to the meeting.
Yeah, so last night was a really emotional meeting. Lots of parents, or lots of students, I should say. Lots of students came, high school students particularly, and largely shared their frustration with the changes to the school year as a result of the strike. And so for those who haven't been following, an extra 42 minutes have been given to all schools. And then the school year is being extended by 9 additional days. And so, yeah, that's a very long time for students to be in school in a given day. It shortens the summer considerably for students. While 9 days doesn't seem like that, that's over the course of 2 weeks. And so students came and really shared a lot of, I think, really important context for folks to understand, like how this not only disrupts their school years and it's not just, I don't want to be in school. It like really disrupts their lives in terms of getting to jobs, supporting their family with like supporting younger students, getting to see parents who work the second shift, catching transportation at key times. One student talked about not being able to go to nationals because of this because of the changes. Nationals in terms of their track national meet, internships being disrupted, right? And so there's a real cost that students are carrying as a result of the strike. And yeah, it was heavy. It was a lot. And I think it's important to just carry that. I'd say the other thing that's important to name is that the school board, because Superintendent Graff has declined to sign another contract after this school year, the school board is also going to be hearing and taking input from community members in terms of what they want to see in an interim superintendent who will be around for over a year. And so I think it's important to know that. And then I believe the week before the May 10th school board meeting, so May 3rd, the chair is going to potentially announce a superintendent, an interim superintendent. And then at the school board meeting on May 10th, the board will have a discussion about that school board or that interim superintendent. Um, we say some of this with not a ton of confidence because also during that time there was a protest happening outside of the board assembly room because students were not allowed into the boardroom after public comment was done. And so during the business part of the board meeting, students were outside of the room, banging on the wall, chanting, using their megaphones, trying to make their voices heard into a room where they were not allowed into anymore. And so, yeah, it was a really hard, heavy meeting. I don't know. What were your takeaways about that, Heather?
Yeah, I mean, you kind of get to my like do better moment. I mean, I understand that the board needed to get through like a very few minutes of business, right? But I believe that the students came with the intention of shutting the meeting down and staying until they got answers. Um, and then they were shut out of the room. And I don't know. For me, what I tried to do in the moments coming up to while we were waiting for the doors to open and stuff, I enjoyed spending time talking to students and just being like, you're going to be in the room where people make decisions about what your day looks like. How are you feeling about being here? I get really excited when I see people come to a board meeting for the first time. And so to have so many students, especially students of color, show up and come prepared. And one student said, like, I should be at track practice right now, not here handling adult problems. And then they got shut out of the room. I don't agree with, I had a really hard time with that decision.
Yeah. I I don't know. I felt really frustrated, I think, at the level of misinformation that is still really floating around about how this came to be. Folks who watch our videos know that one of my biggest pet peeves, especially with the board, is around abdicating responsibility, like just abdicating their responsibility, ownership over the things that they have power for and over. And so, but today my frustration really lies with our MFT and ESP unions, because once again, like teachers are coming, parents are coming, students are coming, and just laying into the school board around like this return to work agreement. And our union leaders who were everywhere to be seen throughout the strike are now suddenly nowhere to be seen when it's time to like come together to say like this return to work agreement was on both of us, right? Both the district and the union leadership. And so the extension of the 42 minutes, the extension of the school year, it was so frustrating to just sit there and listen and watch as if the school board was signing off on something that was against the will of the teachers. Like teachers voted for this in support of it. 75% of them did. I understand that it was in a really rough situation and that, I know people are saying that it was under duress, but it was also under a tactic that teachers willingly also, like 97% of them supported. And so I think this is a really, really difficult situation for the board to feel like they are under fire for something that the union members and union leaders like overwhelmingly supported. And whether or not, the unions and the district should open that discussion back up, I'm not sure. But it is really frustrating to see the school board be the only one supposedly held accountable around this. And I just think, again, we've talked about this so much around how rotten the relationship is between the district and the unions. And I think this is another example that is an example of it, but also feeds into it. Like if I'm the school board, if I'm the school district, like I do not feel good about the fact that the union is just leaving me here to dry while the whole city is mad at me and is not taking any ownership over the fact that we are actually in the room negotiating for this plan. So I think I'm really frustrated by that. And then there was this other talking point that kept coming up last night around, the district should have just given the teachers what they wanted to avoid the strike. They should have just given like, and then they kept saying like, just to get that little 2% raise. Well, let's remember before the strike started, the teachers wanted a 20% raise. All the teachers wanted a 20% raise. It's not like they came down to 2% to avoid the strike. They still wanted 20%. A week into the strike, they wanted 10%. Like the teachers had to come down way down in order for the district to accept an agreement. And so, like, to say that this strike was only on the district, I understand that people want to lay the blame of this at the district's feet. I think both parties are responsible for where we're at right now, and both parties have to own that. And they cannot just say, "Oh, that's on them," and just let the other side. If this is about coming together as a district and moving forward together, as Sean Layden, president of the ESP union, said last night, that would also mean that they would accept some of the accountability and some of the blame for all of the anger that has been created in this like moment now in this return to work agreement. So that, I don't know, I was deeply, deeply frustrated by that last night as the conversation kept moving.
Yeah, I think so. I think for me, yes. We kept saying you left the teachers out on the streets for 3 weeks. That was the other talking point that I kept hearing. And I guess for me, what I kept thinking was just like, at the end of the day, I mean, what we see is what we see over and over again through the pandemic, through the uprising, generationally. Is what I saw in the room last night was that students of color are left holding the shortcomings and the baggage of adults not being able to get it to take care of adult problems in order to do what's right for students of color. And like with that, and I can say that like many of us in the city owe that responsibility, but what I saw in the room was students of color are the ones who are going to have to decide between like being reported for truancy or going to work. That's going to, at the end of the day,
not getting their diploma or going to work.
That's right. It's going to fall on students and students. But because of the marginalization, the things that we have not corrected, the lack of integration, the lack of equity, not equality that came up last night, all of that, we know that the students of color in that room last night and the ones who didn't get to come or didn't want to come, they are the ones who are going to pay for this ticket. Whether I've been really working on having the conversation about like, regardless of blame, let's start talking about accountability.
Right. And I also got to say, before we actually roll into our do better moment and our most valuable moment, I'm also really disappointed that we have, as a city, we still have not gotten a clear answer as to why North and Henry, who already have longer days, have to additionally take the 42 minutes, right? Like that was the big equity question that was on the table from the North side, from the North High students and the Henry students, that no one has answered. And so I think that we should still expect an answer from the board, from the district, as to why the 42 minutes are necessary over at North and Henry especially. But with that, let's close this fast and do our do better moments and our most valuable moments. So let's start with our do better and end on a positive note. So Heather, do you want to start with your do better?
Well, like I got ahead. I did it, right? My do better was that like when the students wanted to protest, they were shut out of the room. And I think that's the opposite of the message that we want to be sending to students right now who feel, look, students, regardless of anything, students feel as if all of this stuff is happening to them and they feel voiceless. And so to me, the last thing that we should have done was like shut them out of the room where they feel like they needed to say voice. And like, I get that we wanted to vote. You and I have seen that room go much longer and much later while adults voiced opinions for hours. And we've seen many adults shut down that boardroom. And so I feel really frustrated that those students weren't allowed to be in the room. I can't get on board with that decision.
Yeah, I think that was like one of the darker moments. And this has been like a series of dark moments for MPS, but like, that was a really dark moment to just think about the students that, we're doing this all for, that we serve, that we're trying to build and sustain and maintain a education system for. We're outside of the room that where the decisions are being made. Um, and like could not get in and had to like bang on the walls and to use megaphones and to do chants to make sure that they knew that the board knew that they were still out there and wanting to be inside. So yeah, that was, and yeah, I think everybody in the room knew that they were coming to disrupt. Like that was not a secret. So I don't know what the answer is, but yeah, that was just a really dark moment to think about. Like our students are literally trying to get in and they cannot get in, and that's a problem. So really quickly, not to brush over it, I do think it's an important point, but my do better moment is, we're not talking about academics in Minneapolis public schools. We are not talking about like the learning loss, the instruction that our students desperately need, not just from this strike, but from the 2+ years of disrupted learning that students have gone through. Students came to the school board meeting last night and were saying, seniors in high school were saying, I haven't had a regular year of school since my freshman year.
Yep.
And they just went through their entire high school career with extremely disrupted learning.
That's
And
right.
we have to figure out a way to talk about what are we doing to benefit students? What are we doing to make sure that even if we are going to stick with these 42 minutes and these 9 extra days, like how is that academically going to be beneficial for students? Like that's not a conversation that is being had right now publicly. We're not getting answers as to why certain schools have to go longer. We just have to get better at like centering this around like how is this going to improve some of the learning outcomes for our students, and um, or what are we going to do to accelerate to make up for things that were lost during the time of the strike. So yeah, that's my do better moment. Like we cannot keep like talking about business when while we're not talking about academics.
Well, so my most valuable moment, even though it was a really hard meeting, was that it gave me a sense of family to see principals from schools who had students there were in the room last night. I felt like that was a really important part of allowing students the right to have that democratic, voice and protest, was that like it wasn't just like adults they don't have relationships with in the room. They also had like their principal in the room with them. And so I'm not sure who made that call, whether that was the principal's call that they did or whether that was the district, but I really felt like that really created a sense of like we're going to support students in voicing. And so my most valuable moment, my hat goes off to the principals who at the end of some long days, the amount of hours that everyone in MPS is working right now is a lot. And that they came and sat there with their students really was incredible to watch.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say my most valuable moment was really hearing student voice. I think most folks know that my background is in youth organizing around education issues. And so to really see and hear students really clearly and logically make their explanations around why the 42 minutes was a problem, and to share that context around, why it's inequitable. And I just thought it was, just to see students take ownership, like people have said, and hold the school board accountable around some of the stuff that they like, around some of the inappropriate things that took place at the last meeting, and also to hold the school board accountable around this decision and letting them know that they're paying attention and they're engaged around this. And hopefully they stay engaged past just this decision. But I think that was really great. And we need to continue to have more youth voice. And I thought Edison came through with lots of great demands. North came through with a lot of good demands. And so yeah, I hope we hear from the school board around how they're going to collaborate closer with students around some of those like very real things that they brought up. So with that, we will end this. Thank you all for listening. I hope you have a great rest of your day. Wolves back. And Heather, thanks for doing this.
Bye.